A unique aspect of a real estate transaction in Hawaii and a concern that always comes up are termites and how do we deal with them? What happens if we find them? And so in this video, we are going to cover everything that you need to know about termites and termite inspections, how the contract works, what you need to prepare for, and what are some best practices in terms of what to plan for during the escrow process. And we'll cover that at the end if you stay to the end. So to get right into this, the first thing you have to understand about termites in Hawaii is it's not if, it's when. You will get them. We have them and there's no way around it. It's just a matter of mitigating, treating, and limiting the effects that they have on a home. But almost guaranteed, every home at some point will get a termite infestation. And so you just have to be prepared for it and deal with it. So the first thing is that there are two types of termites in Hawaii: the drywood termites that live in the house and eat the wood. And then there's subterranean termites that live in the ground, but then also come up and eat the wood. So you could have either one of these. There's different treatment methods for each one. And so that's something that you want a licensed pest control operator to help advise you on. But just know that you can have either or, and that's one of the things that will be recommended when we talk about inspections on how to deal with them and how to treat them if you do have one or the other. Hopefully not both. So the first thing is that in the real estate contract, there is an entire section dedicated to termites, and it is section L in our Hawaii purchase contract. And there's a couple of different paragraphs. There's a part about disclosure, there's a part about the contingency, and then there are protection paragraphs L3 and L4. I'm going to go through all of these in detail so you can understand what they are, how they work, and how to prepare for them. So the first thing is L1 is the seller's disclosure. So this is a disclosure that the seller has to make if there was any past infestation, if there was any past treatment, and they're going to provide this to the buyer so the buyer has a clear idea of what the history has been and any disclosure items that may affect the material value of the property. So just like all disclosures, termites are a part of it. So it's part of the Hawaii disclosure form that you gotta, as a seller, provide that information to a buyer, and the buyer can review that as part of their disclosure review, and they can cancel if they do not like what they find in it. So that's the first thing, is sellers are absolutely required to disclose in the contract in paragraph L1. Paragraph L2 is probably the most important paragraph in terms of how we deal with termites. And so this is where a termite report is requested. So again, it's something that is negotiable. You can request a termite inspection. You don't have to do one. It's always recommended that you do, but this is where you would request it, where you put in a specific dollar amount of how much you expect the seller to pay, because it is a cost to the seller. So a buyer requests this and the seller will pay for it. And then it gives you a deadline on when the pest control operator has to be selected by the buyer. So the buyer selects the pest control operator, the seller then will order it and pay for it, and then how long that report should be provided to the buyer so they have time to review it. So this is something that's important that you got to work with your agent on in terms of structuring the timeline. Depending on how quickly you want to close, you want to make sure that you get this escrow, or you want to make sure that you get the termite report in time to review it and conduct treatment if necessary. So that may push back your closing date if you don't have enough time built in. So you do definitely want to take that into account. And then if you're getting a loan, lenders will also require a clean termite report or a proof of treatment. So that's something that you also want to work with your lender on to make sure it works into their timeline and they have what they need so they can close on time. You cannot get the termite inspection back, the day before closing and that satisfy your loan. So you got to figure that out in your timelines, and a good agent is going to help guide you through all of this and make sure that all of those timelines line up. So if you conduct this termite inspection and you get a report back, and the report is called PC9, which is what the name of it is, and there is an infestation, part of the L2 paragraph is that the seller is required to treat that infestation and deliver the property termite free. And so at this point, you're going to have to figure out, okay, what needs to happen in the PC9 report. The pest control operator will specify what kind of treatment is required, whether it's a full tenting of the entire home, which can be costly, or a spot treatment where they go in and there's a bunch of different treatments with heat or with orange oil or different chemicals where they can treat maybe just one cabinet that has an infestation versus if it's systemic throughout the home or a larger area. So this is something that will be outlined. And again, at that point, the treatment needs to be scheduled by the seller. So this can take some time. A lot of times in a busy market, termite tenting operations can be booked out months in advance, and it can slow down the purchase process. Or there's another thing you can do in the contract where you remove the requirement for the termite inspection and treatment and then have a seller pay for it after closing, so it satisfies satisfied, the treatment is going to happen, but it doesn't necessarily happen during the transaction. All stuff that we can advise you on in the process to make it work for your timelines. But very important to understand that the seller is required to treat and pay for that treatment. And this is normally required unless you change the standard timeline 5 days before closing. A certificate of treatment has to be delivered to the buyer. So that is how treatment works and who pays for it.
Hey, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to click the like button and the subscribe button. And if you're looking to move to Hawaii and want expert real estate advice, you can click the QR code above for a relocation guide on every single island, or the link in the description to book a meeting with me and my expert team.
And then last piece here is treatment versus repair, or deciding on what you do. So the first thing is you can just treat, but you also, if needed to, as disclosed in paragraph I2, which is the disclosure paragraph, if there's any type of damage that needs to be repaired, that's something that you're going to want to request to have happen during the inspection process. And so we'll get back into that in a little bit more detail, but understanding how it's remedied is important. And again, building it into your timeline is very, very important. So it's just a factor that can complicate and slow down a transaction. So handling the damage and treatment is a very, very important part of it. L4 is the last part of the L paragraph and this is very important for a buyer to understand, because this is a disclosure, right? Where it's an acknowledgement of liability, where the buyer acknowledges that if there is hidden damage that either the pest control operator doesn't see, your home inspector doesn't see, you're not going to hold the seller or the brokerage responsible or liable for that. So this happens a lot where it wasn't intentional, but something was missed, and then afterwards, buyer's upset about it. But just know, as a buyer, there is some risk here, and there is no guarantee, right, that it's 100% they're definitely going to find the infestation, or sometimes the treatment happens and it's not effective, and afterwards 6 months later you find out there's termites again. The contract basically states that the seller or the brokerages will not be liable if that happens, because it does happen a lot, and there'd be tons of lawsuits. And just how the way termites work is you could treat, and then a couple months later a storm could come and occupy your house, and then now you got termites, and you can't really prove when the infestation happened, right? So it's something to be aware of, that this is in the contract to absolve the seller and brokerage of any liability beyond what was required during the transaction process. And so last thing, and most important thing to kind of understand, is escrow best practices. We talked a little bit about this previously, but just to outline and put a bow on everything. The first thing is that you want to really include termite inspections are not part of your home inspection. That's two separate inspections. Your home inspection, which is covered in paragraph J1, is where a home inspector goes in and just checks the entire condition of the property. In many cases, they will note pest droppings or pest damages. And this is important because if you want to negotiate and have maybe some damages, like maybe there's eaves that have been eaten out, repaired prior to closing, you want to negotiate that as part of J1 and not necessarily later on when the termite inspection comes, which is usually after the inspection period is over. So when it comes to the strategy behind repairing damage, you want to try and handle that during J1. It's not always possible, but it's important to try and get that done if you can. And then the second thing is accounting for tenting lead times. I talked about this, but a lot of times tenting companies are booked out months in advance. You may be able to get it if they have a cancellation, but you want to plan for that. And I always recommend to a seller to get a termite inspection done early. So if you find something, you can actually get that done prior to being in escrow and being under contract. And it makes the process a lot smoother, not having to worry about it. Not all sellers elect to do that, but that is a best practice. And as a buyer, if you have a seller that has already done treatment or has a clean termite inspection, that's a good thing, because you don't have to worry about that during the process or having any delays in the process. And then knowing the difference between spot treatment and tenting. So if a pest control operator that does the inspection just requires a spot treatment, just know that it's less effective than a full-on tenting. A full-on tenting is they put the big circus tent around the whole house and pump gas into it and kill absolutely everything in the house that is there. That's definitely not the case with spot treatment. So if it's a small infestation and it just requires spot treatment, that's great. But just understand as a buyer that satisfies the seller's legal duty in the contract, but there is less effectiveness when it comes to spot treatment because you're not tenting the entire home. So knowing the difference between that is important. So that's everything everything hopefully you need to know about termites and treatment and how we handle that in the Hawaii purchase contract. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. Email is dylan@buybigisland.com, or there is a link in the description below to our calendar. We can help you on any island. We have the #1 real estate team in the state of Hawaii. We help 1,000 families a year through their process of purchasing or selling a home. And so we have an expert in the market that you're looking at. Just reach out to us. If you book a meeting in the calendar in the description below, we'll get you connected. Fill out the form, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get you connected with Sin to handle and help you with your questions. So as always, it's everything you need to know about termites in Hawaii and the inspection and contract process. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Aloha.